Welcome, everyone, to another Upper Peninsula Environmental Coalition live stream. I'm Evan Zimmerman, your host and UPEC president. And we'd like to start, as always, with the land acknowledgement and our mission. As the longest-serving environmental organization in Michigan's UP, the Upper Peninsula Environmental Coalition strives to preserve and enhance the unique cultural and natural resources of the Upper Peninsula through public education, the promotion of sound land stewardship, science-based decisions and policies, and reasoned dialogue with communities, governments, industries, and others with whom we share this land. The Upper Peninsula Environmental Coalition recognizes the tribal nations of this territory. We acknowledge that we stand upon the ancestral homelands of the Anishinaabe. In doing so, we seek to heal traumas inflicted by an ongoing history of colonization and correct intergenerational justice. And thanks everybody for joining us today. I think it's a auspicious day right now. It's the spring equinox. It's also World Rewilding Day, which I am happy to celebrate here with you as we talk about, some things that are going against world rewilding. So we have part 3 today of UP mining threats with Kathleen Heideman from UPEC and the Mining Action Group, and we're joined also by Tom Grotewall from Protect the Porkies with the Copperwood update, and he's also with UPEC too. So I'm happy to have all of you here and everybody in the audience. We're live streaming on YouTube. We're going to link this on Facebook if anybody's watching. We are going to talk about Talon Metals, Highland Copper, Perseverance, Automation, and Artificial Intelligence in Mining, and opportunities for concerned citizens to take action. And after we have the presentations, we'll have a question and answer session. If anyone wants to leave a comment, either in Zoom or YouTube or Facebook or anywhere, I will try to hunt those down and we can talk about anything that you have on your mind. So I will hand this over, first of all, to Tom Grotewall. Thank you, Tom.
Well, thank you, Evan, for the introduction. Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, UPEC, for hosting these events. Today, I'm going to give an overview of the proposed Copperwood mine and share some recent updates. I'm pleased to announce that next week we've been invited to present at the Michigan Townships Association meeting held in Wakefield on Tuesday. So we're going to be speaking to the police department, the road commission, city commissioners, county commissioners. They specifically invited us and said they would like to hear both sides of the conversation. So this is a very positive development. And I didn't have time to produce a separate presentation for this live stream. So I'm just going to go through what I'm going to be presenting to them next week. And I'm going to skim through quite a bit because I think a lot of folks are familiar with Copperwood, but this will give us a chance also to remind ourselves of what we're dealing with. So if you want more information after this, please go to protecttheporkies.com and you can reach out to me and the campaign directly at protecttheporkies@gmail.com. Here is the map. We see that the proposed Copperwood mine would be smack dab in the middle of the Black River, North Country Trail, the Porcupine Mountain State Park, and Lake Superior. So the Porkies are the largest old-growth forest in mainland Michigan, right on the shore of Lake Superior, largest designated wilderness area. Proud Michiganders fought for decades to see it protected, specifically for mining and logging interests. And a few years back, it was ranked as the most beautiful state park in the entire country. In January of this year, it was ranked again as the favorite state park of the entire state by the DNR. The mining company, Highland Copper, they say again and again that they are not permitted to mine underneath the state park. And they're choosing their words very carefully because they're not currently permitted, but these DNR meeting notes show that it is in fact their plan to begin mining under Section 5 of state park property. If this were the case, permit creep would mean that once mining begins beneath Section 5 and sets the precedent, it will seem much more reasonable to mine deeper within the park. And we'll see permit creep again and again in all of these mining proposals. The proposed mine would also be right next door to the longest national hiking trail, the North Country Trail. Here we see the mining infrastructure, a literal stone's throw from the trail, including this 323-acre waste facility. Of course, Lake Superior, we all know how great the lake is, the largest freshwater lake on Earth, headwaters of all the Great Lakes, and it takes over 190 years for a single drop of water and therefore any contamination to leave the lake and cycle on into the rest of the system. Here we see the proximity of the mineral deposit to the lake. As you see, the highest percentage copper, which is 2%, is closest to the lake. So in fact, they would be able to mine up to 100 feet from the lake, but they express that this is mainly due to permitting, as mining beneath the lake is possible. So if the overall copper purity is about 1.45%, the remaining 98.55% has to go somewhere. And so we would see another tailings disposal facility. Here we have White Pine's current tailings disposal facility on the east side of the park. And we would anticipate another slightly smaller one on the west side, much closer to the lake and much closer to the state park. And it would be erected on topography sloping towards Lake Superior. This is one of our main concerns.
A gazillion cricks.
This is a model that was put out by the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, showing of what it would look like if the Copperwood tailings facility were to rupture, because unfortunately, these facilities are not invincible. And their model shows that in just over 20 minutes, waste up to 40 meters in depth would surge into Lake Superior, as well as potentially into the state park. They did 4 separate models depending on which part of the facility ruptures. In this one, the waste reaches the lake. 2 other models show it passing through the state park and then reaching the lake. And 2 more models show it passing through the Presque Isle River with its 3 majestic waterfalls. So of course we have to ask, what is the chance of a Copperwood dam rupture? But, you know, calculating the chance of a dam rupture is not the same as choosing that red gumball there, because we're dealing with infinite complexity. But we can look at some factors which unfortunately make this slightly more likely than we would ideally like it to be. The first one being that serious dam ruptures are actually increasing in frequency. There's a study that shows that despite technological advances, there's an emerging and pronounced trend of more serious and very serious dam failures. Specifically, this trend is driven by lower ore grades like Copperwood. Remember that the UP used to be home to native copper, over 90%, 95% pure. And now Copperwood, with 1.45%, they build themselves as a high-grade copper mine. That just shows the degree to which the standard has changed. Number 2, a report came out in 2020 by the Association of State Dam Safety Officials, saying that Michigan's dam safety program is extremely understaffed to perform the mission of dam safety. Number 3, Copperwood's infrastructure, including that tailings facility, has been designed to anticipate a 100-year storm event. But these photos here are from the Gogebic Road Commission, showing a 1,000-year storm in 2016 in the immediate area. And there was another 1,000-year storm in the immediate area just a couple of years later. So clearly 1,000-year storms need to be renamed. Copperwood's facility is at the juncture of rerouted streams, which are at highly unstable angles. We have to ask, what would happen if a 1,000-year storm struck and led to extreme swelling in this unnatural stream? Could it lead to unanticipated erosion? We also have a qualified mine inspector who wishes to remain anonymous, but with 32 years of experience. And he says that this is a highly dense fault line zone, especially in the area of the Porkies. You would have highly unstable, very wet ground, which could automatically lead to underground collapse and floodings. I predict in the unstable ground, they would have catastrophic underground collapse. So that certainly does not inspire any confidence. The final factor being chaos. Even in the best of hands, even in the best of cases when all regulations are followed, bad things happen. None of the tailings dams ruptures in the world were ever planned for. So I'm going to skip this video in the interest of time. There's that map again, and you can see why the Native American tribes are concerned about this. And last year we hosted a water walk in which tribes Members of 7 different tribes carried water 31 miles on foot. This headline says it was in opposition to the mine. It was actually a ceremony, not of opposition, but it was held in response to concerns about the mine. Letters of concern and direct opposition have been submitted by the Keweenaw Indian community and the Lockview Desert Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. So even if that dam were to hold, let's assume it holds, the research shows that almost all copper sulfide mines contaminate anyway. This was an independent peer-reviewed study that looked at 89% of US production of copper sulfide and found that 100% of the mines experienced pipeline spills or other accidental releases, and 92% resulted in significant water quality impacts. There's a specific kind of contamination called acid mine drainage. The Copperwood folks, they claim that they've conducted a study showing that it would be unlikely for Copperwood to produce acid mine drainage. However, when we look at who the authors of this study are, this was conducted by Geochimica, which is just one guy named Mark logs in here. And Geochimica states that their goal is to help companies get more value, to achieve success, and to advance their projects. So this is really not a disinterested party conducting objective science that we're dealing with. And then there actually is a study showing that of the 9 mines that were examined exhibiting acid mine drainage, 8 out of 9 originally predicted low acid mine drainage potential, just like Copperwood. So very often we see mines predicting that they will not contaminate, only for that contamination to happen anyway. So looking at this map again, let's ask ourselves, is there a situation in which we would consider mining this incredible area and sacrificing the integrity of these majestic places? For me personally, no, there is no situation. I'm going to be talking to a different sort of crowd than a UPEC live stream. So let's just humor the idea that maybe there is a time when we would consider such an operation. What conditions would need to be met? Well, you would want an experienced company to design, develop, and operate the mine. You would want an emergency situation in which copper has been prioritized to the highest status. Of course, you would want that emergency copper to stay in the country. And then you would want an economic proposal that maximizes the wealth that stays in the community, not just in the short term, but in the mid to long term. Does Copperwood fulfill these criteria? Let's take a look. So on the topic of the experienced company, Highland Copper is actually not even a mining company. They have never developed and operated a mine. They've had 4 CEOs in the space of 10 years, making presumably 6-figure salaries. How do they pay these guys? They buy and sell their own stock as it rises and falls. So since they are in the interest of making money from shareholders, on the very first page of their feasibility report, they have to tell us about forward-looking information. And what this means is that any statement they make has an unspoken amount of risk and uncertainty in relation to future prices of copper, the cost of the project, the economic analysis claims, the levels of employment that they're promising, and of course, environmental risks. On the very next page, it says there can be no assurance that these forward-looking statements will prove to be accurate. So readers are cautioned not to place undue reliance on any statements that are made in the 400-page feasibility report. They don't talk about that very much in their public meetings, that this is all highly speculative and that they're actually telling us not to place undue reliance on any of their statements. So we need to always keep this in mind. They do, however, have experience in degrading wetlands without a permit. And we have seen going back 5 years, 7 years actually, the spokesperson from the Michigan Environmental Council saying that this kind of industrial activity is totally incompatible with the pristine wilderness character of the Porcupine Mountains. It's simply the wrong place for mining. Okay, well, what about an emergency situation in which we really need copper? And we often hear the claim that copper is a critical mineral, but in fact, it's not. There is only one organization that can grant critical mineral status, The highest authority is the U.S. Geological Survey. They denied copper an upgrade of status to critical mineral. It has been listed as a critical material by the Department of Energy. The difference there is that critical mineral status is based in the real supply that is currently available. And the USGS concluded that there is no risk of undersupply. Critical material status is all forward-looking information. So it's about what the narrative is anticipating will be the demand at a future date. And investors and businesses love to talk about forward-looking material because it's all speculation. But the highest authority has concluded that there is no copper emergency, there is no undersupply. So why sacrifice such a beautiful area? And then if there was an emergency, the copper wouldn't even be staying in country. Here, their report shows it would be shipped to Quebec, Ontario, or possibly even Asia and Europe. Okay, but a lot of people would overlook that, all of these concerns, as long as there were a few jobs being made. Let's talk about those jobs. Currently, the company is claiming 380 jobs will be created. Back in 2013, they projected 270. In 2017, they projected 250. Now they're saying 380. If these numbers are inconsistent, it does suggest they are kind of pulling them out of a hat or using models that can be easily tweaked to get a higher number. Why do we have this higher number suddenly? Could it be related to the 50 million state grant that they are seeking? This is what the grant itself says about the nature of those jobs. So as of April 30th, 2028, they would look at the jobs created, and a new job would be defined as lasting for 6 months at least. And many of them would go to non-residents who are employed by specialized employers, which is an organization providing workers with expertise in mining. The grant text also states that it references Eagle Mine and anticipates that Copperwood would coincide with the end of mine life for Eagle Mine. Thus, Copperwood would retain the talent pool. Is lateral job transfer the same as job creation? I don't think so. And the issue here being that this comes from the Power report, which was commissioned by the Friends of the Land of Keweenaw. Mine employees are very mobile, commuting long distance to work while maintaining their residences outside of that area immediately impacted by the mining and milling. This leads to much of the mining payroll to leak out of the region around the mine. Here are some other materials from that same study. This shows the instability of many of these mining jobs. This is the White Pine mine. And we see how, as the price of copper fluctuated, the White Pine employment peaked around 3,000 employees, then plummeted to a couple hundred employees, rose to 1,000 and dropped down to 100 and then finally 0. This is known as flickering. When the price of the metal fluctuates, the mine has to lay off people by the hundreds. Here's what Copperwood's target price of $2.50 that they would need to remain up and running. And that was of his 2013 value. In 2025, after inflation is factored in, it's really closer to $4. And we see all the times that copper has fallen below that threshold, which means that Copperwood would be very much at risk of flickering. I'm going to pass through some of this. This study just shows that this is the most comprehensive study ever done, which shows that in the vast majority of cases, these mines are not good for the local economies. In fact, this is a Harvard professor, former advisor to President Obama, that says in 89% of cases, copper mining ends up being a negative for jobs and a negative for income. You see a spike in the first couple of years of the mine, but it eventually leads into the negatives for the overall economy due to losses in other sectors like amenities and outdoor recreations. And the instability of mining, that has a big cultural impact. The mining industry has the highest rate of alcoholism and the highest rate of opioid overdose of any industry. And then zooming out, we have to look at the history of the Upper Peninsula. A country like France or Holland historically might have gone to Africa, extracted those resources, extracted the wealth. That would have been called a colony. There's a great book shown over here on the left, which makes the case that the Upper Peninsula is what's called an internal colony. And if we look at the history of mining in the UP, we see that as of 1950, 92% of Michigan iron mines were controlled by companies based in Cleveland, Chicago, and Pittsburgh. Boston companies were responsible for 96% of UP copper output. Of the billions of dollars of wealth that were produced, almost none of it stayed in the UP due to lack of secondary industries. And what makes the UP an internal resource colony is that it's the front lines of extraction without there being a vested interest in the long-term well-being of the economy and ecology. In all of these cases, at least the wealth was going to American companies. Now we're talking about sacrificing one of the most majestic and sensitive ecologies for the sake of a Canadian company's profits. So this is, I personally see Copperwood as the worst culmination of the resource colony trend. And the resource colony narrative includes logging, the fur trade. All of that wealth went to financial centers hundreds and even thousands of miles away. But there's good news, which is that even as White Pine laid off thousands of workers and jobs in what they call the export sectors of mining, forest products, and other have been declining, the overall economy of the Western UP from local-oriented jobs has been increasing. And this chart shows that the Western UP, in terms of income, is actually growing faster than the rest of Michigan. So even though we're losing mining jobs and have lost mining jobs over the past 50 years, the Western UP is growing, so we don't need these mines. So does Copperwood fulfill any of these criteria that we listed? It actually doesn't fulfill a single one. So the final point that we be made, a person could overlook all of this and say, well, the $50 million Michigan grant is not going to the mine, it's going to the community for community infrastructure. In which case we have to ask what community, since very few of the residents live within miles of the mine site. I personally am one of the very few people that lives near the mine, so I know for a fact that there are no permanent residents within many miles of the mine site. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of people visit that part of the Porkies every year, specifically seeking peace and quiet. And the Porkies are the largest old-growth forest and designated wilderness area in mainland Michigan, so we have to look at what kind of infrastructure is being proposed. Right, here's the area again. What kind of infrastructure would that grant be paying for? Well, they say it would turn the road into a year-round road, which would help people get to the state park. But in fact, it's already a year-round road. What they want is a road capable of sustaining heavy mining traffic. So they are being deceptive in how they're framing the so-called community benefit here. The cell service. They're saying that will be a community benefit, but is cell service really going to improve anyone's hiking experience? I worked at the state park for 2 years, and people frequently cited the lack of cell service as one of the most incredible parts of coming to the Porkies. And then the power grid. A 25-mile power grid extension has been proposed. And CEO Barry O'Shea brags that this would be a legacy item, which would benefit the community. The problem with that is that when the mine boards up shop after 11 years, that power grid will open the floodgates to ongoing development and change the character of this area forever. And even if that money doesn't go to the mining company directly, the CEO has already called it a true endorsement, which he could then tout to investors, leading to an avalanche of fresh funding, potentially resulting in the construction of the mine. So we need everyone who is voicing any support for this grant to take it very seriously. It would 100% accelerate and enable the construction of the proposed Copperwood mine. Canada first. We're going to be talking to a slightly more conservative crowd on Tuesday. And the current administration cites America first as one of its policy aims. We are talking about sacrificing one of our most beautiful areas, a national, international treasure, for copper to be shipped out of country to enrich Canadian executives. How does this work with the America First objectives of the more conservative members of the country? Right now, we're seeing the copper price going up significantly due to anticipations for a copper tariff to go in place. And what that means is that, of course, higher copper prices would seem to make a copper mine more profitable, but those tariffs could vanish overnight, leading to significant flickering And then the other issue is that if you're shipping the copper out of country, the United States would need to buy that copper back at a much higher premium. So it makes no sense whatsoever. Yep, so wrapping things up here, this is a beautiful area that I think we should encourage everybody to want to preserve so that our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren can know it and love it as we have. And it's never too late for somebody to change their mind, even if somebody from the police department, the road commission, a county commissioner has voiced support for the project. Here we have Brock Tessman, the president of Northern Michigan University, who rescinded support in July of last year, stating it simply means that we do not see Copperwood Mine as the right mine in the right place at the time. Anyone should be able to change their mind. We don't necessarily need to oppose the mine, but neutrality, I think, is a much more appropriate stance for a public body to be taking. So that is what I've got for you in terms of an overview. I'm happy to share updates later on. There isn't anything major, but we can save that for a question and answer period. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you very, very, very much. You have some incredible updates as always, cutting edge, and good luck with the meeting coming up. Let us know if there's anything we can do to support you on that. You're just doing incredible work. You came out of the womb like fully formed doing environmental work. And yet just this week, we discovered that you were busy doing a graphic novel at the same time. I don't know how you guys have been doing all this. Incredible. So just wanted to plug Tom, if you want to say just a quick word about your incredible new creative effort as well. I think it all ties together.
It does indeed. Thank you, Kathleen. And actually, my wife and dog and I, we moved out to that neck of the woods, seeking peace and quiet so that we could pursue our creative dreams. And lo and behold, ended up getting some property right next to an impending copper mine. So, but that's not getting in the way of the creativity, because the fact and the fiction and the imagination and the real world, it all feeds back into itself like a feedback loop. So if you're interested in this graphic novel that we're releasing, I wrote it, my wife illustrated it. We're currently funding the printing on Kickstarter. I posted a link in the profile there. And it's about a city dog who sees a wild wolf howling on the television one night, and the next day runs away to find the real nature channel, and along the way learns a lot about what it means to be wild. And it's intended for younger audiences, but it can appeal to the inner child within all of us. So you can click that link and find out more. Thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Kathleen, while we're on the subject, do you want to talk a little about your most recent creative project?
Well, I have a book coming out. Every minute that I'm not spending going through terrible mining permits right now, we've had them like stacked up like cordwood right now. But every minute that I'm not looking at permit files, I have been working on planning for my book launch, which is coming up on April Fool's Day at the library, Peter White Public Library. We love our libraries. I'm going to play if I can make it work, I'm going to play a video to give you a taste of a preview of just like one poem. Because I agree with Tom that it's all connected, and there are these things that we do because we love the place and the environment and our communities. And then there are these things that we do that sustain us. And so the poetry and the artwork is what sustains me. So let me see if I can get this to play. And did it say share? Oh, no. Okay. Yep. Play, share. Oh, cancel, share. My video file. It says my video file is ready to play.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Kathleen.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad it played.
Who put that video together?
I did.
Oh, wonderful.
I've been teaching myself the tools, but all right, here we'll get started now. This is, can everybody see my next screen, the keynote?
Yep.
Yep, okay, great. Haven't been switching back and forth between keynote and video before. So, all right. So tonight I wanted to talk about taking it personally, Upper Michigan mining threats. This is the third in a series. I did all the mining threats in one single presentation, I guess, in Minnesota about last December or something, and it was way too long and totally overwhelming for me and the audience. So Horst wisely asked me to cut it up in little tiny pieces. So tonight we're going to talk about the historic period. Some of these slides you might have seen flashing by in the video. We start with historic extraction in Jackson Mine. My book, The Caving Grounds, is kind of inspired by that landscape as well. The hardship of the lives there, but also like the environmental costs to the families who lost their homes due to cave-ins and underground collapses and tragedies in families. So it starts in Negaunee and Jackson Mine. And we have underground, open pit mine followed by underground mining. And we have pretty soon the big blast. This is volunteer down in Palmer mine, Palmer, Michigan volunteer mine. And then, all of the trees of the UP are rapidly being cut to supply boards for homes and boards for railroad timbers and boards for beams for bracing up everything underground. It's an intense period of deforestation. We have a kind of a hard time looking back at some of the problems we've caused because we have a nostalgia about mining, but they were proceeding with the information they had, which usually gets better as time goes on. We hope we have better information as time goes on. So, this scene, I hope the lead I'm mining will be used in your paint. We don't always know what the unintended consequences of these historic activities are. And the thing to keep in mind is that we're making historic activities that people will be dealing with, 50 to 100 years from now as well. Our historic resource period goes into the present. The historic extraction leaves scars that are visible like this flying over in a small plane. We have like a 25 square mile area of the interior of Marquette County that is considered an industrial state. Steve Garsky and I just spent the day working on permit comments about the Tilden project and their desire to get a permit that would allow them to bury more wetlands under more stockpiles. Looking at their tailings proposal, which was not included in the application today, but which is in a significant part. And we actually think that it was unlawfully not included because you cannot apply for a permit that lets you get an extension of advanced, mining pit. You're going to mine for another. They wanted another 20 years in this permit. It's really 25 according to their corporate documents. 25 years of mining is not just the waste rock stockpiles that you create, but also the enormous quantity of tailings. This is the tailing dam, and based on, some of us fly over and can see it out of an airplane window. It's very difficult to see this from the ground. All these areas are very hard to see into because it's private land surrounded by gates and moats and, the road that goes around the entire complex. You don't get to see the top looking down, but this is actually a very flattened view. The front wall of the tailing dam is like 100 feet high, and it's made out of tailings. And they just keep increasing the height of tailing dams over the time that they need to store tailings. So I included the screenshot, and you can see all the little designs here. This looks like a really bad diagram that can't give you much information, but it's actually an enormous document of detail. If you zoom in, you can continue to see more and more detail right down to, like 100 feet or something scale, very, very detailed. All the text at the top and on the sides of all these files are all of the permit changes that have been allowed for this single tailing basin, which started in the 1970s. And so they have been incrementally expanding it. It went through 9 different phases of raising the dam height, which is common for tailing dams. But this one is a high-risk dam. These tailing dams are very susceptible to failure. And if they fail, they can fail catastrophically. The way the Gribben tailing basin is constructed is not really that different from the way the Brumilda, I'm sorry, I'm blocking the name right now. The tailing dam in Brazil that resulted in devastation of community and the loss of life. When the tailing dam gave way, all the material, the saturated tailings behind it burst out. So we have tailings dams like this in Marquette County poised above the Escanaba River, but just kind of out of sight and people don't know about it. You can see it there, the red part in the photo from the side. That was taken from space, from the space station. Orbiting astronauts can see Tilden. And then you can also see the impacts. This is a Google Earth photo on the right. That is the scope of the historic tailing basins of the White Pine Mine. And they're poised right above Lake Superior. They used to contribute just enormous quantities of total dissolved solids and salts, as well as copper, dissolved copper, into Lake Superior. And they are planning on reusing the tailing basin. That's the same company that Tom was talking about, Highland Copper. They're planning on reopening White Pine with a new ore body called White Pine North, and they are in permitting discussions right now with the state of Michigan. And then we have scars, not just on our side of Lake Superior, but all around, and ongoing threats. This is Glyphwick's map of mineral exploration in the Lake Superior watershed. And to blow up just kind of our view of the threats right here, this is a geological map that shows you the central and western UP, and these are the threats. We have Highland Copper's Copperwood Mine. That's the far left blue triangle. And then the next blue triangle, that's the White Pine North. We have Perseverance Metals, Voyager Lands, and some targets marked in purple. That's Steve Garski is going to share just a few notes about that at the end of the call if he made it home. This is where Talon, Michigan nickel properties are located. And they've been in the news lately. I'll mention that later. It was previously Sweetwater Royalties. Before that, it was UPEC, which was part of Highland Copper. And then before that, it was Rio Tinto. And before that, it was all considered the Ford lands. It was all properties owned by Henry Ford's companies. Here is the Eagle Block. The Humboldt Mill is the lower pink dot, and the higher one is the Eagle Mine. And then the big square of pink around the upper one is the Eagle Block. That's the land that they're still exploring. This is Cleveland Cliffs, Empire, and Tilden in the middle of Marquette County. This is where Keweenaw Land Association is looking for hot prospects. Several years ago during the pandemic, they had been, known in the UP and northern Wisconsin as an enormous landowner, forest lands and minerals, and they sold every inch of their above ground properties. All of their surface lands were sold, and they retained all of the mineral rights, meaning they severed in that transaction about 500,000 acres of mineral rights. So now somebody else owns the surface, somebody else controls the surface, and they have minerals underneath. But then they're also applying for the state of Michigan for additional minerals. And then way down here along the Menominee River, we have Gold Resources now owns the Back 40 project, which used to be Gila Back 40. Those are the projects we're trying to keep track of right now. There are others, little ones, but these are the big ones that keep us up at night, I guess. Just to briefly mention Talon Metals, this is what was in the news just this past week and week before. Lundin Mining gains rights to the Boulder Dash project. So the Boulder Dash project is out on the Michigamme Highlands, sort of between Lance and Eagle Mine. As a crow flies, it's really hard to get there. Like they talk about it in terms of its proximity to Eagle Mine. Almost every project you'll notice talks about its proximity to Eagle Mine. It could be like 100 miles away from Eagle Mine, and they're like, we're only 100 miles away from Eagle Mine. So that gives people clout, like who really don't track, the mining issues. They just have heard of the Eagle Mine or nickel mine out there. And so they think that that means that, they're tapping into the same ore body or something. So they're way out in the middle of nowhere, but they are on the upper headwaters of the Huron, Big Huron River. So it seems like every one of these mining projects would have a direct impact to a significant and beloved little river in the UP. This plan here announced was that Lundin would invest $5 million up front to help them continue drilling. They would be giving additional investments as Talon keeps drilling, up to 30,000 meters with an additional payment for every 10,000 meters of drilling that the Talon company proves up, with ultimately the Lundin Mining being able to earn in a 44.625% right to the Boulder Dash project if everything pans out. This is a very old map that dates back to Save the Wild UP and the Yellow Dog days when we first started becoming aware of the Kennecott. Back then, it was Kennecott Rio Tinto's preferred sulfide mine out on the Yellow Dog Plains. This check pattern that you see is the Henry Ford land package of mineral rights. It's pretty much a section every other section was controlled mineral rights. And again, those are the ones that Talon is now exploring. Talon has opened an office in Lance. They're based in Minnesota, in a tiny little town that reminds me a lot of Big Bay. They have one mine located under a whole bunch of wetlands in Tamarack, Minnesota. And they have created their own opposition, just as every mine in Upper Michigan does. They have been drilling and doing exploration in Berrigan and Marquette counties, and that's where they talk about, they have hot prospects. What I would have said prior to the Talon announcement about Boulder Dash is that the BIC site was maybe the most well-defined. The BIC site is another eagle, a little Eagle Mine kind of type ore body, which is within the reservation boundary for Keweenaw Bay Indian Community. And I was afraid that that would be the one that sort of got all the attention and activity, because they're also closer to 41 and all of that as well. But they've been drilling in multiple locations. They claim that they're being transparent, but it's very hard to find anything out about mineral exploration. Is all considered proprietary in Michigan. But they have a tribal engagement liaison who used to be the mayor of Marquette County, Cody Mayer, and he has been talking about how, this is just looking at the resources. Don't worry, it's just we're making better decisions about our supply chains in the future. And, if we find something, it'll ultimately be up to society to decide if the newly discovered resource will be extracted and contribute to the domestic supply chain. So I just want to say there was no vote on any mine that we have in the UP, and there will be no vote on this one. the only way that the community gets to decide is how much opposition there is to a project, which is what groups like Upper Peninsula Environmental Coalition and Save the Wild UP and Yellow Dog and anybody who cares about place has to speak up as it's happening, not waiting to see if they find something. So also they apply for their permits under other names like Houghton Battery Metals, not in their own company name, which makes it really difficult to track what they're doing. They claimed that they were looking for a needle in a haystack in a dark barn, which sounded super difficult, but it turns out, honestly, because we track where they are looking, that this is a project area that was previously drilled by Kennecott and by UPEC. So they had like their needle in a haystack lit up with, uranium or something for them to find really easily. It was glowing out there in the dark. They could find it very easily because there was all kinds of previous drilling had happened at the Boulder Dash site. This is their announcement of the Boulder Dash and also talking about they have been drilling at a site called Roland Lake, which is closer to Skaney. And then in the same, period of time, we were dealing with mineral lease requests from Keweenaw Land Association. And that's the one that I said got rid of all of their surface land and just retained all of the mineral rights. Which, every time you have a different ownership at the surface than underground, you'd think, I guess I grew up on a farm. I always thought that, my dad owned the field all the way down to the middle of the earth, right? It's just this kind of vision I had, and I'm sure he had in his head as well, that like your land was this kind of pie-shaped thing that went down to like the magma core of the earth or like contained the groundwater underneath you. But in Minnesota, Michigan, Montana, all these states that have companies from the beginning writing our laws about mining and property, this is a situation where the mineral estate was given priority. The mineral estate is considered dominant legally. And the person who owns the minerals has legal access to explore, access, remove, extract. It's very screwed up. Also, they don't pay any taxes. So, by getting rid of all their surface timber rights, they don't have to pay even the commercial forest taxes that they used to pay. Now they're not a taxpayer. And they have royalties in the Copperwood area, this company, Keweenaw Land Association. So then that wasn't enough having a 500,000 acres of land. So they have been asking for more and more state-owned minerals, like about 20,000, 30,000 altogether. It just keeps incrementally, we'll get another big pile. And when you get 10,000 acres requested all at once, it's very difficult for any group to review the impacts to the site. Steve is very brave and tries to go out snowshoeing in deep snow to look at the potential impacts in the Ottawa, where the Ottawa National Forest is above the land that the state of Michigan wants to lease to this company. But it's winter, right? There's several feet of snow out there. And the people who are making these decisions on our behalf, the DNR Mineral Leasing Department, are making them using their desktop review stations. They're not actually out in the field determining whether there are significantly, unique or special threatened species or habitat out there that should not be leased. So the mineral leasing situation is very concerning. We find that these companies are just trying to control the field as opposed to actually doing anything. Like Keweenaw Land Association got rid of all their employees. They got rid of all their vehicles. They got rid of their office. They had one CEO and a secretary. So, they're not out there in the field doing like a bunch of geochemical drill testing or something. They're just trying to control the future of royalties and minerals in Michigan with a mining boom around the corner, I think. So they've been very interested in the old Groveland mine area and in rare earth minerals, as well as the kind of things that Eagle Mine had. So then pending and trending, I just wanted to talk briefly about the things that keep kind of popping up in your news feed that scare you a little bit. So it's the rise of the robots, the electrify everything, connect everything, automate everything. And this quote here is talking about how Spot, which is a computer, a robot, dog basically type robot. It's this animated dog type thing. It can run an entire spot check through a factory or underground. It can operate in complete darkness. It doesn't need lights, and it doesn't make mistakes. It doesn't get cold. It doesn't have a sick day. So, I think that these mining companies, as much as they've been talking about jobs, they are also busy automating away from human jobs. So here is the Spot type robot. This is the robot that everybody saw patrolling Mar-a-Lago. And then similar versions of this are designed for police and the military and can include lethal weapons. So the question was raised, this was a question I raised last year, like, are mines going to automate their security forces? And yes, indeed they are. This is one from another location looking at historic mining areas. This is an all-terrain robot dog capable of navigating, performing scans, performing security, doing video. Drone swarms and drones in the air can also be used for securing mining sites and getting visual, images of what's happening. Here is something that I found on the Yellow Dog Plain several years ago. These are remote controlled vehicles, and these are remote controlled drilling rigs. They don't look super high tech, but there are versions that are extremely high tech that can be remotely run without an operator nearby. So I wanted to share this poem that seems to speak to me about that kind of remote, the machines out in the wilderness doing these exploration and drilling projects. This is by a Welsh clergyman, R.S. Thomas. Too late. The machine appeared in the distance, singing to itself of money. Its song was the web they were caught in, men and women together. The villages were as flies to be sucked empty. God secreted a tear. Enough, enough, he commanded, but the machine looked at him and went on singing. So I'm going to just stop for 1 second this video and share a different video. I mean, share this slide and jump to a different video. Let's see if I can find that one now. Oh, right. Okay.
Kid Creek Mine is an ultra deep mine in northern Ontario in Canada. We mine metal, so copper, zinc, silver, and we're one of the deepest in the world, closest to the center of the earth. We're a large operation with large equipment, large openings like the one behind me here that we need to inspect on a regular basis. So when it comes to this type of mining, the most important control that we have is to create distance. So everything we do here has to be at some kind of distance from hazards. So in this particular case, we're looking at inspection, and inspection is something we have to do every day as part of our job. Typically we have to go to fairly great lengths to do it. So right now that means using very traditional style robots, even wheels on sticks. As primitive as that may sound, that's common in the industry. Tools like this can get us right up and close and personal with the things that we need to see. Currently, when we're trying to get information in these type of locations, we use small tracked robots that we can carry around easily as part of our normal work. And we need to ask a lot of our operators to come through here and clean the areas, clean the floors and so on so that we can get in. But what I've seen with Spot is that it's been able to pass anything that is normally left without any real special care to make it accessible.
So, in case you haven't been having vivid dreams lately, you will tonight, I think, after seeing that.
That was terrifying. Thank you.
All right, and just to finish the slides about new technology, we have lots of views now of these robot dogs in underground locations performing exams and surveys and remote testing for bad air or subsidence. They can also do mapping, three-dimensional mapping. This is not a kind of a science fiction world anymore. This is in use. Sandvik is doing this all over the world. This is a big supplier of underground mining. Eagle Mine is using the LHD vehicles that can be operated by remote control. So the operator is not in the vehicle. They're like standing at a safe distance, which is kind of just a very short step away to the operator will be up above in a nice safe room above ground or in a trailer or back in Marquette, Michigan, and the machine will be operating underground without the operator at all. This is Rio Tinto using autonomous mining haul trucks in an iron mine in Western Australia. So the two trucks are controlled remotely and they sense each other so they don't bang each other or dump in the wrong place. Everything is very precise because they don't have any human beings to screw it up. Here is the jobs argument is falling apart as these are good paying jobs if you were driving one of these things. People in Marquette talk about the great paying jobs at the mines here that are basically truck driving jobs. And, these are becoming fully automated. All aspects of these trucks can be fully automated now and not require human drivers. So jobs for autonomous mining trucks, not jobs for humans. Innovations unlock human potential. This is a statement from Lundin Mining. I love the lowered cost of total ownership while providing us with a single source of truth. It's super philosophical. I mean, I'll have to think about that. But basically, they're automating their operations. It says they have a mining operation, the Jose Maria, down in the Andes of Argentina, and they are doing autonomous operations so that the crews don't have to be out in harsh environmental conditions. This is a remote controlled, probably satellite controlled, near real-time soil sampling and analysis robot. This is what the companies do all over northern Marquette, Michigan, when they are conducting soil sampling and rock analysis. They have teams that are going out and taking soil samples every day. And this one is a robot that can take 120 soil samples and then return to a central remote mobile analysis lab base station, basically, where it goes in, it processes the sample, it recharges the battery, and it uploads all the information. This is an autonomous drilling rig, again, in Australia. They have 5 of these drilling rigs running from a single console in one administration building. So one human operator running 5 of these drilling rigs in another building, and all of these are sitting there, operating remotely. I don't know how many people would have been working on it prior, but I've seen drilling rigs smaller than this out in the Yellow Dog Plains that had 5 guys standing around it. So I don't know what the mining numbers for jobs are going to be when the rise of the robots hit. This is the drones for resource mapping kind of idea. This is the drones that you see flying around taking lovely pictures of Sugarloaf, but they're also being used to map and analyze ore bodies. They can fly them underground as well as in open pits. There are a lot of companies doing it. This image shows you, I don't know if everybody remembers, like back in the day when Eagle Mine was exploring, there were a lot of pictures of their planes and helicopters taking off with like these giant things that looked like missiles strapped down to them. And then they'd fly around Marquette County and do all the remote mineral exploration, doing their magnetic surveys. And this is how it's being done now with drones flying automated lines, extremely precise, and they're dangling the magnetic sensors underneath themselves. So, this is already happening. It's not hypothetical. This is called Earth AI. It's using AI to analyze large sets of existing geological data that we have, and then using AI map where the people should go out and drill and say, like, try it here, go test over there. And it says it can discover untapped critical metals deposits at half the cost in a fraction of the time, right? Because people just like wander around all over in the woods drilling and trying to find something, but this is Earth AI now. It's data driven by our robot master overlords, and they're just going to know exactly where to drill. And then the other side of the technological kind of, I mean, I'm torn, with all of these about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Certainly, it's more precise. Maybe it's less environmentally damaging. Could be less loud, less polluting. It could be terrifying and, violation of autonomy and security and privacy. I don't know. But this is one of our abandoned mines in the UP, the Groveland Mine and Mill in central Michigan here, in the central UP, down by Felch. And this is on its way to becoming a great solar farm. Where you just level off the giant waste rock piles and put solar panel farms up on top. That's in the works. I actually think that, like, we've been talking about this, like, instead of putting solar farms out in the woods and cutting down trees or, along the shoreline of lakes or something, why don't they go put it out in a brownfield that's already been damaged? This is what they're planning on doing at the Groveland Mine. And this project here is showing that, the evil, dirty mining and the green, clean energy kind of people are all coming together and like short circuiting. So they're like literally mining to create solar panels that they put on their vehicles to do more mining. So if they close that circuit entirely, like, is that a good thing? They have a limitless supply of power so they can mine more. I don't know. It's complicated. And then UPCO has just announced a new solar project on the tailing basins of the Republic Mine. This was in the news just this past week. From iron ore to solar power, UPCO is promising to prioritize stewardship by developing this enormous thing out on one of the former tailing basins. If you look out here, I love irony. So this is former Republic Mine site, UPCO, 100% site control. Well, except you can see there's like this dividing line here that goes right through the middle of the tailing basin. So it's not 100% of anything. Like, this was the tailing basin. It actually extended much further to the south. And I know that site because right now Tilden is proposing to do wetland mitigation using wetland mitigation banks that they created on those old tailing basins as well. But this one seems to be moving along, and they'll be bringing power to that Perch Lake substation. And then here's Spot, the robot dog we saw earlier working underground. Steve, are you here? Do you want to take us out with a few comments about Perseverance Metal? I'll let you take over the screen if you'd like. Or I
Hi,
can.
hello
Slides.
everybody. Can you hear me?
This is Steve Garsky.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you too.
I'll mute
Yeah,
myself then.
yeah, we just got done with some comments. Kathleen and I worked very hard on those comments though, and then she asked me if I'd just say a few words about Perseverance lease request. Um, this is that's pretty scary, Kathleen. All those I knew they were trying to automate everything, but I had no idea all those machines were out there, so that was wild.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'll just maybe show you a few pictures and things. Perseverance lease request. If you know where Bond Falls Flowage is, it's kind of east and south of Bond Falls Flowage, and I'll show you a map in a minute. Um, they want to, they've requested state leases of minerals for 629 acres. And if you're like me and think better in square miles, that's 101 square miles, so 10 miles on the side.
That's huge.
I think, wait a minute, 629 acres. No, that's not right. That's about 3 square miles. 101 square miles have been leased out in the UP. And that seems like a small number, but they're scattered across the UP.
Yeah.
And of course, if they do exploration on these parcels, they have to make roads that go into the parcels. They have to make a drilling pad. And if they find minerals, then they may mine it, which is a whole nother level of environmental destruction. So here, let me put a map up. Can you see my screen? No.
We cannot.
I don't see it just yet.
Try this again. Here. Oh, it never did this to me before.
It said, yep. Now we can see it.
Okay, good. Now if I can expand this map. Is there a map on my screen? Can you see a
I'm
map?
sure.
Can you see a map?
Yep.
Okay, good. This is like this is the Perseverance lease request, and this here is Bond Falls Flowage right here, State Highway 28. The red squares are the Perseverance lease request, 1629 acres, and these other squares are current Michigan DNR mineral leases to other companies. So this is one of the biggest clusters in the UP. And they just keep asking for these things, and it seems like the DNR just keeps rubber stamping them.
Yeah.
So what
Steve,
else
are
do
some
we
of those brown ones that are the previous lease requests, are those all of the Eagle Mine leases in there, or are there other companies in that pile as well?
There's other companies, Trans Superior Resources and Talon Minerals has some of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think Weyerhaeuser has some of these too, or was that a little bit different area? I don't remember, but yeah, it's a real mix of different companies. So
What were the big issues that you saw with the red marked?
okay, I'll show you a
Perseverance
couple
ones?
pictures.
Yeah.
See if we can get another picture on the screen. I just got out there a couple times, once last fall and once about 3 weeks ago in the snow. And this was last fall, of course. And it was it was that block of requested parcels in the south on the lower right-hand corner, so that'd be the southeast. And most of that is conifers, upland conifers actually, but this was a really cool wetland. And I do have more photos of this wetland, but I walked all the way to the back of it.
We're still
And
seeing your map,
it
Steve.
was oh, you do? Okay.
We just see the
This
map,
is-
yeah.
Never did this. Okay, let me try again. That's this one. Now, can you see it?
Yep.
Oh, good. Yeah, it goes way back and then off of the parcel that they want to lease, but
Oh,
I
that's a
found
lovely
pretty-
wetland.
Yeah, it was dry. I walked all the way back. Probably full of
Mhm.
water in the spring, so I want to try to get out there again and take a look this spring. But
Hmm.
it was pretty interesting. Lots of tamarack and basically boreal forest,
Hmm.
which is a fairly endangered habitat,
Yeah.
given global warming and everything else. So, and then maybe one more. Stop share. And when you go to these places, it's every place is different. You never know really what you're going to find. But this is U.S. Forest Service too. So was the last one actually.
Mhm.
This is Ottawa National Forest,
Hmm.
and they want to lease the minerals under the public lands. So I took a walk out there, and when I was reading the comments, it didn't occur to me at the time, but this is probably. Do you see this lump out here, way at the far end, straight out?
Beaver pond?
Yeah.
Is that the beaver?
This is a
Beaver
beaver
lodge?
pond, and that
Yeah.
is a beaver lodge. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not a tiny one, it's a big
Yeah.
one.
Is that a
Uh,
dam in the foreground?
yes, it is.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's one of the longest dams I've ever seen that I can recall.
That's great.
That's got to be very old too. So,
Hmm.
and there's trout streams out there, and this is as far as I got, and I had to come back because it was a couple miles and
Hmm.
uh, deep snow, and I didn't want to, and the days are short, so I didn't want to get caught out there in the dark. So, but it was a really neat spot. So. It always helps to take a look at these sites when you're trying to understand them.
I'm assuming you just snowmobiled out there, right, Steve?
No, I walked on myself too. Oh, don't. I would have been tempted if I had one, but
I'm trying to picture you on a snowmobile,
it
actually.
was good exercise. So I don't know.
Well, it's so unfortunate, I mean, I don't know what your perspective is, but we have commented on like dozens of lease requests now. I mean, it's just been, nonstop.
Mhm.
And then we don't even find out from the state whether they made the decision to lease it. They never even bother writing back to you. Like it's so not in they're so not interested in public input. They already have made up their mind basically when they do the desktop review, it seems to make these mineral leases happen. That's my perspective. I don't know what you think.
Well, yeah, it's obvious they just keep rubber stamping these things.
Hmm.
And we've written in too that to tell that we think they should go out there and take a look rather than just sit on a computer and try to figure out what's there. Because this pond isn't even on the map.
Really? Yeah,
No, it's
because it's
just showing as
beaver.
wetlands.
Mhm. Huh.
But and there's
Uh-huh.
another one I can see on the aerial photos or the satellite photos
Mhm.
upstream of this one to the left. There's another pretty big pond that flows into this one. So there's two big beaver ponds out there. This one's a little bit bigger than the other one, but still. So yeah, there's boreal forest again. Lots of tamarack. Really pretty spot. So yeah, and as Kathleen was saying before, like public officials and mining companies, they like to say that, well, we're just exploring and it's not that much damage, and we'll probably never put a mine there. You know, very few of these, they don't find minerals on very many of these spots, but I think they're getting better and better at it. And they've had the help of the USGS too, because the USGS has done a lot, haven't they, Kathleen? They've done a lot of mapping.
Yeah, and
That
they've
data's
been doing
available.
flyovers and
Yeah.
the state geological service was the geological survey of the state of Michigan was kind of informed that they needed to go out and update all of their kind of literature reviews. Like this was in the last about 5 years, and they've been busy doing it, So yeah, I don't know how to get traction with this. I mean, I think the real answer is we need mineral leasing reform. First of all, I would just say to anybody who's not following this, they are not, the state of Michigan is not doing a competitive bid process for these valuable minerals that all these companies are interested in. they're not accepting bids, they're not taking any control of the situation. If we have very valuable metals in Michigan that every other place is interested in controlling, I think that at the very least, the state of Michigan could treat it the same way they do, let's say, our state forests with we have renewable state forests, and they have to do compartment reviews. They have to, kind of cycle through, not just cut one square section until there's nothing left. You don't cut everything in just Gogebic County for like 5 years or something, because it wouldn't recover. And they have not heard that message. They have a process where the applicant self-nominates the parcels that they would like to lease, and then there's no competitive bidding. I don't see that the state of Michigan has really recognized that these are non-renewable resources, that they have to manage differently than they do, trees. They're not thinking about it in a very discerning way yet. And it seems like the mining companies are leading, as opposed to the regulators. That's my perspective. But also, we have a situation where, still most people don't recognize the challenges with the mineral leasing and mineral rights, that they may or may not own minerals under their own camp or their home. It's really, there's a lot to be reformed. I had heard that we've been pushing for Michigan to become a requirement to report mineral lease transaction or mineral transactions. When minerals change hand, it's not like recording the deed to the property. Somebody can just put it in their pocket and not make that change of ownership known. But I had heard, this was maybe a couple of years ago, that some of the changes to the mineral rights reporting and notification of who owns mineral rights was going to change. But then I kind of lost track of that in the deluge of new mining applications. Any other thoughts? The big thing, I think, I would just say, like, quickly, that if you know a place, if you've been there, if you've walked on it, if you have, regular experience of the place, the animals that are there, you just have far more useful information to share with our regulators, whatever the permit is, whether it's, a wetland permit or a joint permit application or a mining permit or a mineral lease request. Like, they're not out in the field. There just aren't enough of them. They don't know. And if there are good regulators who are taking their job seriously and protecting our natural resources, they need to have good information, and that requires us to participate in the process. So I urge you all to defend the places that you love.
Very nicely said.
Well said.
Jeffrey Towner, I'm looking at the questions in the sidebar. Jeffrey Towner had a question about the Tilden mine expansion that we just submitted our comments on today. If the state issues the permit, is there any thought about referring the decision to the EPA? So the timeline unfolded slightly differently this time. This is the third iteration of their giant wetland permit. Their giant joint permit application. So wetlands and stream impacts. Last time, before the decision was reached, before the public comment period had closed, we had seen the comments of the EPA, which helped because we knew that they had objections. They had serious objections to the issuance of the permit. This time, we have not seen any of the federal comments on the permit. It's a red file, so EPA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and probably the Corps had a chance to look at it. I hope they maintain their objections. I don't think most of the aspects of it have changed. I'm not sure. you know, if they approve the permit, I don't know what comes next, honestly, fight, but, I don't know. I don't know really. I have a hard time imagining exactly what to do if they approve that permit. It would be egregious for sure. But we gave them damn good comments again. And we pointed out that they need a damn good safety permit review in their joint permit application because Tilden didn't consider that aspect of their permit application at all. So all those potential wetland and stream impacts were not included. So hopefully they'll listen. I think they were ready. I think the state of Michigan was ready to deny the permit last time. So keep that our goal again. Let's see. We have Jeffrey Lohman saying. Jeffrey Lohman says the USGS provides the mining industry with critical science information. It is true. They do. They are feeding information to the mining industry and vice versa. They work quite closely together. I mean, every so often they do, monitoring streams and coming up with groundwater assessments or something. But yeah, USGS is working very closely with the mining industry. Was there a question on that, Jeffrey, as well? I don't know if he's still on the line. Tom, thank you so much for your, yeah, and the Brumadinho collapse on YouTube is shocking. Thank you for posting the links there, Jeffrey. I really appreciate that. The fining, the fining of the company has been in the news just in the last week. I believe that's pending a decision in the courts in the UK because the company is based in the UK. Does anybody know if that decision has been announced? I was kind of watching it for, sorry, I butchered the name earlier. It's been a long day. Tom, with the Kickstarter, I don't see any other big questions in here. Thank you for your positive comments, everyone. Yeah, the next Copperwood permit is the NIPD's, the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit. And remind me, Tom, did the last one actually expire? Is this a renewal? If you can just briefly say.
Yeah, the last one I believe has expired. This is a renewal of the same permit, and I have the application in front of me. They're requesting to be permitted to be able to discharge a maximum of 500,000 gallons of wastewater per day into Namabinog Creek. And the interesting thing about that creek is that there is a population of a fish called red-side dace about a mile downstream, which is a Michigan endangered species. So we certainly will be pushing the question of whether dumping demineralized wastewater into the habitat of a fish that is so sensitive that it's endangered is a good idea or a legal idea.
Is that fish a federally endangered species too?
Only Michigan endangered.
Okay.
We covered a lot of ground today. If there's any
Yeah,
final question that anyone has, we still have some time to do a little Q&A. I'm seeing some comments coming in here more from Jeffrey Lohman.
Evan, do you want to just briefly make a plug about Celebrate? And then I'll quickly make a plug about the poetry part of Celebrate.
That was on the tip of my tongue as we were wrapping up here. So on April 5th, Saturday, coming up in just a few weeks here, we have our big annual event at the Peter White Public Library. It's going to be 10 to 4. This is when we do our public board meeting, when we tell you about everything that UPEC did over the year. We announce our grant winners. We announce our winners for our photography contest. And we have lots of great presentations coming up for you. And we have lots of poetry happening too, and Kathleen is going to lead some wild UP poets in the Shivers room while we have presentations down in the community room. It'll be all day long. We are going to be releasing more information very soon on our website. You can go to upenvironment.org. We've got info up right now about what's coming up. I can give you the link. Just go to upenvironment.org, environment.org, and I'll put the link right here for you. And you can keep in touch with us right there. And we'll be sending out emails. We'll be putting posters around. We'll be doing everything we can in order to promote this for everybody. So we hope that you can make it there. We know that there's lots of stuff going on now that spring is here, and we would love to see you there. And you'll get to see more of Kathleen's new book and her work, as well as a whole bunch of great poets. Like we have Christine Sari and plenty of others. And we're going to have a big party and celebration. We'll eat together. We'd love to have more discussions about what everyone's doing. We would love to, hear more about what you're doing and what you're involved with personally, and we can exchange info. And it's just such an important time for us to encourage each other. We really try to focus this event on the positive things that are happening in the UP environment, on the great work that everyone's doing, the wins that we're having, the community events that are being pushed forward. We have a lot of challenges like this, and we're not going to ignore those, but it's important to remind each other of what we're doing and what we're accomplishing at the same time, because, burnout is real, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And this is a group that's at the core of making that happen and coordinating work between other people. And so I appreciate everything that's happening. I'm looking forward to the future where I can get a job wearing a drone as a hat and using myself as a human battery. But maybe we can make an even better future possible together. Maybe we can come up with some alternatives.
Thanks, Evan. And yeah, before everybody heads off, I just wanted to say the poetry part of the Celebrate event, we've often had poetry, but this one's going to be a bunch of poets reading together. We have both the present and the former poet laureate of the UP, so Marty Achatz, and we have Beverly Mathern, we have Gayla Mallerby, we have Christine Sari, we have Lynn Domina, more poets than you can shake a stick at in the UP. So, and a whole bunch of them are coming out with great new books, myself included. But anyway, the poetry thing is going to be fun. That's in the Shirus room, and then UPEC is taking over other parts of the library as well. So please join us there and join the fight. Anyway, thanks everybody for your attention. We appreciate all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Keep up the good fight, everyone.